Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar between American Student Assistance and Bellwether. We're going to be talking about our recent report, Making It Work, 10 Stories of Progress and Promise in High School Work-Based Learning. I'm Liz Texeira. I'm the new Vice President of Social Impact here at ASA, and we are a national nonprofit changing the way that kids learn about their careers and how they prepare for their futures. So we're very excited to be here today with my colleague, Kelly Foster. So I'll turn it over to her for a quick introduction.
Thanks, Liz. Hi, I'm Kelly Robson Foster. I'm a senior associate partner at Bellwether. And Bellwether is a national nonprofit that exists to transform education to ensure systemically marginalized young people achieve outcomes that lead to fulfilling lives and flourishing communities.
Thank you, Kelly. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes kind of walking everyone through the project overview today and how we came up with this white paper. So we know that right now the exposure to work for young people has changed quite a bit. Back in the 70s, we had about 60% of teenagers who were employed. We are down to about 35% of teenagers now who are experiencing the world of work and workforce. And we know that regardless of what happens, we need to be doing a better job preparing our young people for the world of work. So again, we're trying to kind of get to the root of the issue, and we're looking at scans of different states and different policies about how they're actually making sure that these work-based learning opportunities are available to their young people. Next slide, please. So how do we define work-based learning? There are a couple of different definitions kind of swirling around. So we wanted to take a second to talk through how we here at ASA and how in this partnership with Bellwether, we've defined work-based learning. So to us, when we talk about work-based learning, we mean opportunities for students to actually learn through work. We know that, again, this needs to be a continuum of experiences, starting with young people when they're really little, thinking about kind of career awareness and exploration. They need to learn about work, right? What does work mean? What are my aptitudes? What are my skill sets? What do I like to do? You can learn those things through things like career fairs and industry field trips. We know that as little people get a little bit older, they need to actually learn about work through exploration activities. So things like job shadowing or taking on a mentor or going to informational interviews in fields they might be interested in. But for the focus of this report, we focused on this third bucket that you see on screen here, which is around career preparation. That means learning through work. When we talk about learning through work, we mean things like internships, practicums, service learning, project-based learning, and pre-apprenticeship programs. That is what we're going to be focused on today. We want to make sure that we're being very clear that work-based learning expands beyond that as well, including when you're actually in a career and when you're training for your career. That more formal type of work-based learning, we consider that things like clinical experiences or apprenticeship experiences. So again, there's a whole continuum of career-connected learning that we need to make sure that our young people have access to. But in today's conversation, we're going to be focusing on that third bucket, learning through work as a form of career preparation. Next slide, please. So right now we know that employers are interested in this, right? We know that, again, they want to be doing this. And so are students. Our students are interested in having internships and experiences with trying before they buy. They know that in order to go into a career that they are passionate about and well prepared for, they need to actually have experiences while they're with us in the K-12 system. So right now, our research is showing us that 79% of our students are interested in some type of work-based learning. We also know that they really want to learn about skills that they need for the world of work and workforce, and they're interested in the different types of career fields, especially as those career fields are changing and morphing as technology continues to advance through AI and other emerging industries. Despite all of that interest from our young people, right now we know that only about 34% of our students have even heard about opportunities to engage in work-based learning. But even more dramatically, only 2% of our young people have actually completed some sort of work-based learning experience. And we know that that has got to change. We need to make sure that our students are getting exposure to the world of work and workforce before they actually commit to this career field. Next slide, please. So like we mentioned, we know that employer participation in this and interest in this is growing for employers. They are recognizing right now that actually in order to make sustainable talent pipelines, they need to be connecting with young people earlier in the game. They can't be waiting until after high school to actually get young people interested in their career fields or in their companies. In 2024, ASA found that, again, the number of employers who are actually willing to offer work-based learning has increased dramatically, right, by about 8% since 2018. The numbers continue to grow as employers see the need to make sure that they're getting young people into these career pipelines earlier in the game. Despite that interest from our employers, we also know that, again, that's a whole new skill set for an employer to figure out how to work with young people. And many of them are still actually not able to offer more than one or two at a time, right? When you think about work-based learning, you think about a traditional internship. That takes a lot of resources from a company side of the house, right? They need to figure out how to onboard, they need to figure out how to kind of work with young people. So right now we know that, again, when employers are thinking about work-based learning, they're still thinking about it as a nice thing to do, not as a business strategy. Again, that perception is starting to shift, but right now we know that we need to be doing more work to make sure that we're helping not only our young people go into work-based learning experiences, but we also need to be making sure that we're helping our businesses figure out how to offer those experiences to young people in a sustainable, scalable way. Next slide, please. So now this moves us to states, right? What is the actual role of a state in this ecosystem of work-based learning? And there are a couple of different things that states do when it comes to work-based learning, right? We know that one, they are traditionally putting together a strategy. Employers and young people exist in a broader ecosystem. That ecosystem is a state, right? So we know that when states are actually setting clear strategies around how to make sure that these opportunities are available to young people in coordination with employers, that's when we're seeing success. States are also able to coordinate between different parties, right? So again, if you were a state education agency or if you were a member of the governor's team, you were able to reach out and coordinate across these different systems. When we talk about the different systems, we're thinking about K-12 system of higher education, and the system of work and workforce. States can also play a really big role in actually removing barriers for young people. So thinking about opportunities to provide transportation, for example, to get to internships. Kelly's going to go into a lot of additional examples of this in a few minutes. We know that states also provide oversight and accountability. They're the ones making sure that they're setting up the appropriate systems that, again, students can take advantage of and employers can opt into. They also are making sure that we can offer these opportunities at scale, right? They're increasing access for young people and offering those at scale in a way that an individual intermediary would not be able to do. Importantly, a state also has funding available for work-based learning. So we know that one of the critical levers that a state can pull is increasing their actual capital, their financial resources to make sure that, again, our systems are able to engage in work-based learning. And finally, and very importantly, a state's role is actually providing continuity in programming. So unlike things like kind of grant funding or initial programs or initiatives, the role of a state is to make sure that whatever strategies, funding, removing of barriers, they are the ones making sure that that kind of work continues throughout an initiative. They're the ones figuring out how to make sure that there's continuity across the three systems, K-12, higher ed, and workforce. They're also making sure that whatever kind of new pilots or projects get started, that they're the ones helping make sure that they are sustained. So roles are really critical in this ecosystem, in this conversation about work-based learning. And we are very excited to talk about 10 different states today who are doing this work very well in different ways. Next slide, please. So again, why are we seeing all this progress with states right now, right? What are some of the reasons that states are kind of leaning in so heavily right now into work-based learning? One, we know that there are additional flexibilities in federal funding when we think about Perkins, WIOA, and again, ESSA, right? Some of those funds in those three different initiatives can be used for work-based learning. And we're seeing states start to take advantage of that flexibility. We also know that, again, students want this and employers want this. We hear again and again that employers need better prepared students, and we hear students saying that they want more information and experiences before they actually opt into a career pathway. So again, the desire, the demand is there. We also know that right now we're seeing philanthropy get involved in this. We know that, again, with the world of work and workforce changing so dramatically and quickly right now, we need to be preparing our systems to navigate that change. So we are seeing a lot of investment in best practices, in national scans, in research, similar to what we are doing here today. We've also seen a number of big initiatives get spun up right now to capitalize on this interest in work-based learning, including through New Skills for Youth, through JP Morgan Chase, NGA, the National Governors Association has leaned into work-based learning. And we also have JFF with the Pathways to Prosperity Network that works with states directly on different models of work-based learning. So again, we're seeing a lot of activity in this space right now, and we're trying to make sure that we're capitalizing on that with high quality research as well. Next slide, please. So here is again where we kind of started. Back in 2021, ASA worked with Bellwether to do a 50-state analysis of different policies. And in a little while, we're going to show you a QR code so you can actually download that resource as well. But what we're here to talk about today is a follow-up to that initial 50-state scan. We wanted to track and see the different trends that we're seeing across 10 different state partners to see how much that landscape has shifted since 2021. So with that, I will pass it over to my colleague Kelly so she can start to talk through some of the initial, again, progress that we saw from states and what we are starting to see now. Kelly?
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, so like Liz said, back in 2021, we did a 50-state analysis of work-based learning policies. And a lot of what we heard from states was that they either had an initiative that had just started, or they had a lot of things planned that hadn't yet taken root. And they wanted to make sure that those got captured to the extent possible. And the rubric that we were using in the report that we put out in 2021 really was a moment in time. But we wanted to come back and revisit some of those states and get a sense of the progress on the work that they had started back in 2020, 2021. So these are the 10 states that we looked at. We revisited to track their progress. So I'll talk really quickly through the initiatives that each of these states are undertaking currently. And then I'll spend the rest of the time talking through some of the themes that surfaced as we focus in on the particular initiatives that those states are undertaking. So in Connecticut, they were very focused on regional sector partnerships and public-private partnerships to support education to career pathways. So bringing lots of folks together from different private and public organizations focused on particular sectors that were of need in Connecticut. Illinois launched what is called the Illinois Work-Based Learning Innovation Network, or IWIN. That was a virtual space where folks from across the work-based learn all of different pieces of work-based learning. So educators, K-12 and post-secondary, families, businesses can come together to share innovative approaches to work-based learning and share resources and ideas and just meet with colleagues doing similar work. Kansas initially piloted a regional support structure for work-based learning to make sure that all the districts across the state had access to the resources that they needed. And through the pilot, which ultimately was incredibly successful, they were able to secure funding to make that work-based learning approach permanent. Louisiana did a couple of things. They launched a new dual enrollment program to allow high school students to access college courses. And at the same time, they revised their school performance accountability system to directly include work-based learning activities. Maine leveraged federal COVID-19 relief dollars to expand their extended learning opportunities, or ELOs, in communities across the state. So making sure that more districts were able to offer ELOs so that more students had the opportunity to take advantage of them. Maryland has been very focused on improving access to work-based learning for students with disabilities in particular. They launched 3 grant-funded programs, 2 of which were very targeted on that student population, and more broadly focused on expanding youth apprenticeships. New Mexico also launched 3 work-based learning programs. They were able to take advantage of additional state funding that the state was able to appropriate to these work-based learning activities, and also focused on building statewide infrastructure to support the work that these 3 programs had started. North Carolina is working to scale their pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship opportunities, and they've been able to take advantage again of state funding and centralization of resources so that all of the participating entities know where to go to find the information that they need. Washington State has grown what they call their Career Connect Washington system through a couple of different initiatives over the last few years. One, they were focused on sector-specific strategies, so identifying sectors of need in Washington State and building out programs aligned to those sectors, providing grant funding to do that work, and also shifting to a new leadership structure as the Career Connect Washington system has kind of matured over the last several years. And then the last state that we profile is West Virginia, which has been heavily focused on building data systems to track work-based learning participation, and importantly, to tie some of the state funding to outcomes in work-based learning. So the next section I'll talk through, and you can go to the next slide, Allie, 9 themes that surfaced as we explored the initiatives in these 10 states. And I won't read them to you here on this slide. That's a lot of words. I know this is just a quick overview, but I'm going to talk through each of them individually and just talk a little bit about what it looked like in these 10 states. So you can go to the next slide, Allie. So theme 1 was that a clear definition of work-based learning is necessary for a coherent state approach, but this remains a really complex endeavor. When you think about work-based learning and all of the different types of activities that Liz talked about at the beginning of our conversation today, people don't have the same definition of what an internship is, or what is a pre-apprenticeship, or what is, there's so many different words that people are using. And so states are really focused on aligning around common terms so all the stakeholders involved know what we're talking about. So in Louisiana, legislators took the initiative to update and clarify the statewide definition of work-based learning in several pieces of relevant legislation so that when the term work-based learning shows up there, everyone knows what we're talking about. West Virginia did the same thing in some administrative protocols and imposing common language around the different types of work-based learning so that someone knows if what they're doing is a pre-apprenticeship versus an internship. Connecticut, state leaders were working to overcome what they called a language barrier between academic and business partners as we're bringing folks from different sectors together. Again, they're using different terms to refer to common experiences and opportunities. And so really just working with folks to come aligned around a common set of language. And Illinois did this too. They built what they call a dictionary of key work-based learning terms for stakeholders. The second theme is that policy changes have helped expand work-based learning opportunity contexts and address known barriers. So Liz talked about the important role that states play in work-based learning, and here we really see this profoundly. So Maryland, Connecticut, Louisiana, and Kansas, in those 4 states, state leaders have established some activity at the state level to really incentivize progress. So they've either put together a statewide vision for what work-based learning could be and should be, or they're in the midst of a strategic planning process for work-based learning and pulling together all of the different entities that are involved in that work. Or like we mentioned in Louisiana, redefining college and career readiness standards that include work-based learning and are really incentivizing progress on the ground. States also have a really important role in removing barriers to access in work-based learning. So in West Virginia, a legislation passed back in 2020 requiring high schools to make sure that young people have the information they need to make post-secondary decisions about what types of employers are hiring in their local geographies. What are entry-level salaries looking like? So schools are now providing students with that information so that they can make those informed decisions. Maryland has really been focused on expanding work-based learning supports for students with disabilities to make sure they are able to access these programs and opportunities, and also passed legislation to protect young workers from age discrimination in apprenticeship hiring. And then New Mexico recently passed legislation that provides core credits for work-based learning experiences that count toward graduation requirements, which is super important and is the only state that we profiled here that's doing that type of work. Theme 3, cross-agency and cross-sector networks have helped expand work-based learning opportunities, foster system coherence, and support professional learning. So I sort of mentioned this, but there are so many different stakeholders involved in work-based learning and making sure that it goes well. You have students and their families, you have educators in the K-12 system, the post-secondary system, you have businesses and employers, and bringing all of those folks together is not easy, and states have really stepped up to do this work. So Connecticut, Kansas, Maryland, North Carolina, and Washington have all established some sort of work-based learning council or career council at the state level, typically through the office of the governor or the state legislature. But they're bringing together folks from various state agencies, education, commerce, labor, economic development, along with representatives from higher education and labor and the business community to put their best thinking together and really pursue these work-based learning opportunities and put them out there so that families and students can take advantage of them and to make sure that they're organized and accessible. Illinois took a slightly different approach. So one of the universities there pulled together the Illinois Work-Based Learning Initiative, IWIN, that I mentioned. And that does something similar to the councils that other states are doing. It brings together employers, educators, work-based learning coordinators to learn from one another in communities of practice. And that has really, over the last several years, fostered statewide learning, professional development around work-based learning, and given the folks doing this work a community of peers that they can go to with questions and to get ideas. Theme 4, funding is key to states' work-based learning efforts, but time-limited funds pose challenges for program sustainability. So Liz mentioned the important role that funding plays, and I think everyone knows that this is very important work and it costs money. And so in Kansas, Maryland, New Mexico, and Washington, those 4 states have put together consistent budgeted annual funding to support work-based learning initiatives, which is incredibly important. It allows programs to know that there's going to be funding next year, so they're able to hire, they're able to expand, they're able to get the resources and systems in place that they need to make these programs successful. States are also leveraging federal dollars from lots of different programs to support work-based learning activities. So Maine used federal pandemic relief funding to expand its extended learning opportunities. Kansas is using Perkins. Washington is using WIOA. Maryland is using Rehabilitation Services Administration funding. And then several federal grant programs, Good Jobs Challenge, Apprenticeship Building America, states have been able to take advantage of. And so that funding has helped spur a lot of the activity that we've seen in the 10 states that we profile. Theme 5 is that states need additional staff and tools to support students and businesses to navigate work-based learning programs and forge connections. So the additional dedicated staff is something we heard over and over again, and just that this is very human work. There's a lot of connections across all of the different entities. There's understanding individual student needs and community and local needs and marrying those two things. And so in North Carolina, the Department of Public Instruction actually hired a new staff member who's, I love the term conductors is the language that they were using. That's not her job title, but they were using the language conductor to talk about her being a single point of contact for all work-based learning inquiries across the state. So anytime a district or a business or even a student or family had a question, there's a single person in North Carolina's Department of Public Instruction who can answer that question for them. In Maine, they were using pandemic relief dollars to hire school-based coordinators who then do that local work with students and businesses and bring those folks together. And Kansas, schools are required to work with each student to create an individual learning plan to support them with goal setting, skill assessment, et cetera. And there's lots of folks involved at the school level in supporting students to do that work. In addition to the human piece of this, online tools play a really important role in bringing together schools, students, families, and businesses. And so both West Virginia and North Carolina, as examples, have online portals that offer career options and information and programming to help guide students and families in making decisions about career opportunities and do some of that matching between students and local businesses who may have aligned interests. Theme 6, states have made efforts to expand business partnerships to support work-based learning, but continue to experience pain points. Liz mentioned this at the beginning. Businesses really want to do this work, but it is also difficult. It is also a different set of competencies that they need and a different set of resources that they need to be able to support students to engage in work-based learning activities that are high quality. And so all 10 states that we profiled here expressed a desire to build more and stronger business partnerships. A couple of examples of what that's looked like. In Washington, Career Connect Washington, which is the organization leading their work-based learning work, identified what they call sector leaders. So one organization in each of 10 high-demand workforce areas, and they provided those organizations with grants so that they could actually lead the expansion of career-connected learning programs for different in each of those sectors. Connecticut and Kansas are both developing regional partnerships that align with local economic needs. And so identifying an organization in a particular region that is tasked with identifying opportunities that align locally there. Maine, like I said on the previous slide, is hiring local school-based coordinators who are seeking out local business partners to do some of this building and expanding business partnerships. And then Maryland is focused on improving employer outreach and supporting its business partners and ensuring they have the tools and resources they need to support students with disabilities in these opportunities. Theme 7, states know they need robust, high-quality data and strong data infrastructure, but it remains a significant challenge. This is not a bullet point here, but I would absolutely say that all 10 states mention data in some capacity. They have it, they don't know how to use it, they need more of it, they need it more organized to be able to make good use of it. West Virginia here is doing some really exciting work building out the capabilities of its existing administrative data collection system. And they've built it out so that it's now collecting work-based learning data that includes participant hours, wages, certificates earned, and they're connecting that data to some funding decisions that they're making to incentivize high-quality programming. Louisiana is in the early process of expanding its student transcript system to collect new data related to work-based learning, and Connecticut's in the early stages of developing a framework for a statewide integrated data system that will include work-based learning. Theme 8, this ties directly to the data piece, but formal evaluations can be a useful tool in assessing work-based learning offerings and identifying gaps in access. In Maryland, they hired an outside consultant to come in and do a formal evaluation of some federally funded work-based learning support for those students with disabilities. And the outcomes of that evaluation helped state leaders identify changes that they needed to make to that program to make it work better for students and enable them to pursue additional federal grants that making those adjustments to the programming. And similarly, evaluation evidence from an initiative in Maine indicated that the state's work-based learning offerings were having a significant impact on student outcomes and also highlighted gaps in access across and within communities. So again, having the data is one thing, understanding what it means to make the changes that you need to programs to make them more accessible to students is another, and evaluations can play a really important role there. And then the last theme, transportation remains a significant challenge, especially in rural areas. I don't think this comes as a surprise to anyone who's familiar with the work-based learning landscape. All 10 states that we included in this report mention transportation in some capacity. And in particular, all of the states have large swaths of suburban and rural geographies where public transportation and ride-sharing options may be limited. And so trying to get creative about how to solve the transportation challenge. Sometimes those additional efforts are met with even further challenges that they didn't see coming. Maryland, for example, considered a program to help students acquire their driver's licenses, only to realize that there weren't enough cars available for students to actually drive to get them where they needed to go. And then Maine aspired to provide school bus transportation to these opportunities, but struggled with a lack of bus drivers. And so again, states are working on this. They know it's a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge that states are working to address. All right, and with that, that is a quick overview of our report, and I'll hand it back over to Liz to talk through some resources that you can access.
Thank you so much, Kelly. As you can all hear, there's an incredible amount of work and energy around work-based learning right now at the state level. These 10 states have done an incredible job of advancing things across policy, funding mechanisms, governance models, data systems. There is a ton of work happening, and today was just an overview. If you were with us today, you have some sort of vested interest in either work-based learning, state policy, funding models, or career-connected learning. So we wanted to make sure that we are providing 5 different kind of key resources for you to take with you after this webinar. The first right here, if you open up your phone, you can kind of click on this QR code here to bring you to the actual report itself. So this is the white paper, Making It Work, 10 Stories of Promise and Progress in High School Work-Based Learning. That is the report that we covered and gave a brief overview of today. Next slide, please. The next right here is the original analysis that we did back in 2021. So again, this is the Working to Learn and Learning to Work, a state-by-state analysis of high school work-based learning policies. So here you can see, again, the 50-state scan that ASA completed with Bellwether back in 2021 to give you a little bit of additional context about the work that's happening across the entire country. Next slide, please. The third resource is a bit of a follow-up. ASA conducted this to make sure that we were actually providing best practices around improving outcomes for career readiness for students and young people. So all of these resources can be found on our website, but we're also making sure to provide these QR codes for you here today, so you can actually go through and download them and kind of follow up at will. Next slide, please. The next resource here is around durable and social emotional skills. We decided to throw this in here because we know that as the world of work and workforce continues to evolve and change, the skills that our young people are going to need are going to be changing as well. We know that all employers want kind of core skills of responsibility, professionalism, timeliness, communication, and we really want to make sure that we are making those work-based learning experiences inclusive of those durable skills that we know that all students need as they navigate the changing world of work and workforce. So this resource here will actually kind of provide some information and resources about how to make sure that work-based learning opportunities include those critical durable skills for young people. And finally, we want to make sure that if you're interested in this type of content, this type of policy, this type of white paper or brief, that you're actually signing up for the newsletter pivoted here. So again, this is the QR code that will bring you to our website to make sure that you can sign up to receive, again, ongoing content, information, and resources about work-based learning and other offerings from ASA. Finally, we just wanted to thank you all for joining us today. While we were able to provide a brief overview of the most recent white paper that was conducted, and we provided a couple of additional links for, again, and QR codes to resources on the ASA website, you are also always welcome to reach out to us directly. We would be happy to kind of talk through any of these states or any of these resources in additional detail. And we want to make sure, again, that we are providing our information here today. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Kelly, to you and Bellwether as well for your partnership with this report. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks so much.